A to the K.
A to the K.
A to the K.
Hello, welcome back to the A2theK Wrestling Show. And on this edition of What If, we are taking you back to 1996. It sounds like one of those really cringy radio DJs. And now, let's head back to 1996.
Play all the hits, all the time.
First, the Spice
and
Girls.
Them cheesy sound effects and like spattered out in there as well. Did you say the Spice Girls?
I don't know, they were around 96, right?
I mean, they probably were, but like that was your go-to for 96.
Oh, what's your go-to for 96?
I'm just feeling like you're watching this particular moment that happened, and you're like, I wanna. Like, was that what you were doing? I couldn't think of any other Spice Girls songs. I'm so sorry.
I mean, I can't think of any, so what does that really say about us?
I mean, that's the thing. Like, you remember a lot of the Spice Girls themselves.
Oh, well, obviously.
It's almost like you were a teen.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yes.
So Carl, this week, man, there are times in wrestling when there are moments that are so pivotal. They change the landscape. I'm still going with it. They change the landscape of the entire industry. And those times leave us in a modern day sense right now to say, what if that didn't happen? What if it happened differently? What if things had just totally escalated in a different way? Where would we be? What would wrestling be today, Carl? And that is what we're going to cover.
It certainly is. So I imagine anyone listening to this or watching the show probably knows the story of the infamous curtain call. If you don't, essentially, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall headed to WCW in their last match at a live event at Madison Square Garden. We had Shawn Michaels versus Diesel.
Oh, that's what that meant.
MSG. They took that out of the food, didn't they? But after the match, they were joined by none other than Razor Ramon and Triple H, who all embraced in the ring, leaving the crowd very confused. Why are the good guys and the bad guys hugging, Mummy? I don't get it.
Why are none of them wearing pants?
Where am I?
Wait a minute. The wrong channel.
Yeah. So eventually this led to a number of the wrestlers being absolutely furious that kayfabe was broken and the integrity of the business was jeopardized.
Kayfabe super important. Super important. You should never break it.
No.
Ever.
Except
now, because no one cares.
But obviously Vince had to do something about it, and he decided that there would have to be some repercussions. He couldn't punish Kevin Hall. Yeah, because who's that guy? He couldn't punish Kevin Nash or Scott Hall because they were already on their way to WCW.
It turns out, though, Kevin Hall lost his job, so he did punish him.
Yeah, fuck you, Kevin Hall. It's just some lowly janitor backstage. I can't punish Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, but Kevin Hall, fuck you. He couldn't punish Shawn because he was the champ at the time, which meant that the bunch?
Couldn't punish Shawn because he's just a sexy boy.
Yeah, well, yeah, there was that too. But yeah, basically the bulk of the blame was placed onto Triple H, who then took the fall.
Naturally.
So, Anthony, without further ado, we've given the listeners, the watchers, a little bit of a trip down memory lane in terms of what the curtain call was.
Can I just clarify one thing? I think you've made it fairly obvious, but I want to make sure that our audience are aware. We are not what-ifing if Kevin Hall and Scott... No. Damn it, Carl. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash left. That still happens in this what-if.
It certainly does.
This is a what-if on the curtain call, not them leaving to WCW. So I want to make that clear, because that is something you could talk about all day in terms of what if they'd have stayed? We're talking about the actual repercussion of the curtain call. So I just thought I'd add that in, because I don't want sort of that to be an expected tangent that we go on, which it's not going to be for this particular segment.
No, you are absolutely great to point that out. But yeah, so obviously the event happens. Kevin Nash, Scott Hall both leave, head to WCW. Shawn still the champion. Triple H takes the bulk of the blame. So the original plan, if you would believe word on the grapevine, was that Triple H was set to win the 1996 King of the Ring that year. Now he's being punished for being part of the curtain call. That no longer happens, and instead, the King of the Ring is none other than Stone Cold Steve Austin. So if the curtain call didn't happen, Triple H would have gone on to win the King of the Ring. But since it did,
we've got Hunter 316, just doesn't have the same ring to it.
Well, exactly. So we wouldn't have had any of this 316 line. And I've said before on the show that isn't what got Austin over, but that was certainly a big feather in the cap of what started to make.
It's definitely one of them iconic moments that is like, it's weird to think of a possibility that it's not there. In all fairness, for Austin's run.
No, absolutely. But I mean, we'll come back, I suppose, talking about what that could have meant for Austin's character and where he went. But I mean, if the curtain call never happened and Triple H would have won it, that would have eventually set up a feud between him and Shawn Michaels for the title.
Indeed.
So would that mean we would have never got DX?
See, this is where it starts to snowball. This is why I love this segment, right? So potentially, yeah, Triple H wins King of the Ring. He gets that momentum. He goes on into a program with Shawn, and we just don't birth DX, right? Mm-hmm. Or not in the same sense we got it now. Well, let's just assume DX doesn't happen because these guys are DX, right? Not to leap too far ahead, but ultimately, like, DX are a lot of what helped the war against WCW.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that could have had a massive impact on, like, going forward. If that had never come off, that could have had a massive impact on them, rivaling the likes of the NWO and the more edgy products, because they'd have not had the edgier side of DX, which is insane to think. I'm sure they'd have done something, but, DX was like a sort of perfect storm, really, of like, Triple H needed something. He would, like you say, he had been punished, so had been sort of relegated from his run at that point. But that was almost the best thing that could have happened to him, because the DX days and that sort of work was just some of his best stuff, really. I think it showed a lot of his comedic chops as well, in all fairness.
Oh, it certainly did. If you think about it, he was still essentially like that blue blood, royalistic, character that he was playing at the time. But this was kind of him breaking away from that. And if you think about it, would we have ever seen China? Either, because
that's the interest. I mean, I think we'd have probably seen her, but again, you got to argue, like, considering how much DX did for her. I know she did a lot for DX, but considering how much DX did for her, like, what kind of run could you have had in WWE without that massive sort of screen time, if nothing else?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, she only got brought in because her and Triple H had gotten quite close, and basically they, Triple H and Shawn, like, lobbied real hard to Vince of, like, we need to bring her in. He hated the idea. He didn't want to go anywhere near China.
Do you think, because obviously we'd still have Shawn and we still have Triple H, not in DX, albeit, but we still had the pair of them. Do you think they still would have lobbied for her to be in the company?
Maybe. I mean, she could have ended up being some kind of, like, bodyguard for Triple H or something kind of character, potentially.
Yeah. Which, I mean, there's that, like, especially if you're still carrying on with the Blue Blood thing, they could have been quite feasible. He had a bodyguard and didn't want to sort of get involved, like, almost Weasley in a way. So that would have been fun. I think we should, like, that whole thing should have happened.
Yeah, I know, it would have been nice to see in hindsight, but I think the point you made as well, and we'll kind of, I know we are going to go into it in a little bit more depth, but, like, DX was essentially WWE's version of, like, the NWO, almost. It was that big faction that people tuned in to see what kind of crazy hijinks they get up to this week. So,
I mean, let's not forget, like, a lot of the battle with WCW, everyone always remembers DX and the Tank.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if we didn't have a DX, we wouldn't have had that moment.
No, I mean, there's so many moments, isn't there? There's a lot of stuff now which, hasn't aged well, for example, in terms of the stuff they did. But, like, I think we spoke about it before, like, stuff at the time that we thought was stuff that we thought was like.
I mean, ultimately, we would never have got Katie Vick, so maybe.
Yes, actually, yeah. Maybe this is the timeline we needed, but no, obviously, like, the stuff with, like, the Nation versus DX, and, like, obviously, them doing like blackface and stuff like that. Like that obviously isn't why the segment was funny. Obviously, it's people are very much against it and stuff now. But like the impressions and imitations stuff they did, and the comedy, like the stuff they did on the the censorship thing. Like we will, however, never use the words ass, damn, all that good stuff. Like these are all really funny segments, which maybe
that's
I
the
don't
thing.
know.
I think that's. I mean, it is controversial now, and I totally understand why. But I can almost see how they got there with the whole dressing up thing with the nation, because they were parodying their friends. They weren't like. I don't think there was a consideration of racism when they did what they did. You can look at it now, totally out of context, and go, "What the fuck are they doing?" And I get that, but like, I could almost see how they got there in their heads. Do you know what I mean? Because they're like, "Well, I'm going to do an impersonation of this guy, so I need to look like him." Like, as basic as that. Do you know what I mean? I can see what I get what they were doing, but it's like, oh, that did not age well at all.
No,
Like,
certainly didn't.
I honestly, even looking at it now, you go, "How was that even on TV then?" Damn.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, like we're saying, they're just like ribbing the friends or whatever. Like Mark Henry must have been pissed, man, with that, because X-Pac came out full blackface, a full fat suit on. They were there saying, "Hey, Mark, how do you get your pecs to go all the way around your back like that?" It's just like full on like character assassination of him. So,
but at the same time, like, I don't know, like, I always assume when stuff like that happens on air that they've all sort of give the nod for what's a go and what's a not. Do you know what I mean? Like with each other, like when you're going for somebody, I always, and I could be totally wrong on this, but I always thought that there was at least some sort of conversation there where Mark's gone, "Yeah, I'm totally cool with that." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. When Shawn Michaels is involved in
like
something,
that little chuckle, then I'm thinking maybe not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole Sunny Days stuff between Brett and Shawn and Sunny and things like that. So, no, things aren't always cleared. But yeah, you'd like to think, wouldn't you? But so if you move on slightly from DX a little bit, then we go back to obviously, essentially what happened instead. So Triple H didn't win King of the Ring, and Stone Cold did. And as we know, the rest is almost like history from the back of that. But do you think if Austin hadn't have won the King of the Ring at that time, his career trajectory would have, risen so high to the point that he became, because essentially it was the Attitude Era, him and McMahon. That was like the catalyst, wasn't it?
I'd be interested to know what impact that would have had, because you've often said about Austin 316, iconic moment for him, but that was not what made him.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the infamous double turn between him and Brett is essentially the moment he became Austin 360. Well, not Austin 3, but his moment he became Austin as we know him. So I like to think that we would have still got Austin as Austin. Do you know what I mean? It's interesting that it's like, would he have risen so high? Is an interesting one. I mean, I like to think he probably would have, but it would have perhaps taken longer, and that can have a big impact anyway. Like, would he have ended up then at the right time to have that feud with McMahon and be that anti-establishment guy? Maybe not. Like, he'd have still been this sort of redneck badass that we got, but like that might have changed the whole sort of dynamic between him and Vince. I
mean, if you think about it, in '96, he'd literally just come out of the ringmaster gimmick. Like, they had nothing for him creatively. It was him who was like, I've come up with this character. He's like a cold assassin, basically, and they came up with all these names like fucking Fang McFrost and stuff like that. He'd literally not long debuted Stone Cold Steve Austin. So he was still trying to figure that out. But if he didn't get the push that he got in '96, would they have gone in on him so high to the point where they've gone, well, he's a King of the Ring winner? That meant something back then still. It didn't mean he was going to become
as much as you're quite right, I think we can both agree that probably wasn't the moment that made him Stone Cold Steve Austin, but that is probably a very pivotal moment for management having the confidence in him to sort of push him where they did. So I think it's fair to say I still think he'd have got there, but it probably would have taken longer. And I think the consequence of taking longer would have been a total change in the dynamic between him and Vince, and he'd have probably still ended up being a top star in WWE, but we wouldn't have had that, like you say, that Attitude Era Vince McMahon versus Austin potentially.
Yeah, I mean, not that I wore it for this segment, but you can see how pivotal the Austin 316 t-shirt became, from a merchandise standpoint.
While we're sharing shirts, like I've got Undertaker, who is not affected by any what if because he does what he fucking wants.
Does whatever the fuck he wants. But you know, like this T-shirt itself, that obviously the Austin 316 is one of the like widest selling T-shirts in all
Yeah.
of pro wrestling history.
Which
So it's
actually
like,
transcends pro wrestling. Like most people know Austin 316. Most
yeah,
people recognize that merch and they know it's wrestling. They know it's Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's widely known.
yeah. So it's like, while that moment didn't catapult his character to become the Stone Cold we all know and love, the megastar, it certainly, people loved that promo, and you know, he started to gain fans at that point. So it's
And
like,
it's
without
mad
that
because
moment,
it's not like anyone else would have took the mantle with that. Like Stone Cold having that moment between him and Jake the Snake is what made that promo. That's
yeah.
what made that comment. You never know what's going to land as like a thing that everyone remembers, do you? Like I'm sure Austin, when he said it, didn't realize how impactful that was going to be.
Well, the funny
But
story is, like, none of this was pre-planned or anything like that. Stone Cold busted his lip in the previous round. He was backstage getting stitches. He missed all of Jake's promo, and so he said, what the fuck did Jake say?" And so they just kind of said, "Oh, something about this, something about John 316, blah blah blah." And so he,
so yeah, and that's
based,
why, because essentially that's the promo, isn't it? You come out here, you thump your Bible, etc.
yeah,
Because like you say, he didn't know word for word what he said.
yeah,
That's interesting. I didn't realize that.
yeah. So
See
it's
all the
like,
fun things you learn on these segments, guys. Or
see,
I
it's
do.
fun and educational. But I mean, it lends itself to this question then. So if the Austin fucking mega boom never happened, did WWE end up beating WCW?
Hmm. I mean, that's an interesting one. We could potentially walk into a world here where WCW won. TNT are the biggest wrestling channel, and WWE falls into obscurity. Is ultimately bought out by WCW. Like, you could go into a whole crazy fucking world there, can you?
And
I mean, Vince McMahon. Honestly, that could be a what if in itself because I think Vince McMahon would never be a man. Like, even if his company was on its fucking knees, I honestly think he'd have always been too stubborn to sell to them anyway.
I mean, to
We'd
be
have never
fair,
have got the McMahon thing where he bought everything. I think McMahon would have like never let that happen.
like, you know, 96, 97 onwards, he was facing serious financial ruin. You know, the stuff with Brett, like one of the reasons Brett went to WCW, it wasn't because Brett wanted to go, is Vince cancelled his contract on him. He said, I
Yeah,
can't afford to pay you your contract. So he even offered to help him negotiate the deal with WCW because he wanted him off the books because he had no money. If you think about it, they had no stars, they had no gate. Everyone was tuning into Nitro for 83 weeks. So,
yeah. And obviously the Bischoff, the man who really knew what he was doing, you know, he spent money wisely and everything went really
and
well.
the rest was history. Um, but I mean, if you think about what a shit show WCW became towards the end, like there's no denying the stuff with the NWO and all that good stuff.
Their
There was a solid
biggest
year.
thing was Hogan. Let's be honest. The biggest thing to happen for WCW and the biggest draw for people watching was Hogan becoming a bad guy.
Yeah,
Like let's be honest. Like whether you love Hogan or hate Hogan, that was unseen. This all American superhero type guy that he's always been. Like that change and that people wanting to see just what Hogan's become on WCW. That was bigger than NWO as far as I'm concerned. Obviously, NWO played a massive part in that because he was part of the NWO. But
hmm
like that was for me that was the biggest thing that helped WCW.
I mean, 1,000,000% it was. If they didn't have that, they didn't even stand a chance because they absolutely, rode the coattails of that angle to the point where it was an absolute caricature of itself. They had,
Well,
you
I mean,
know,
they got to the point it was NWO Wolfpack. It got to the point that it was ludicrous the amount of different people who were joining the NWO. Like it's
literally
just
everybody was in the NWO. It became not like this elitist cool club anymore. It was like, I mean, no offense to Virgil. Virgil was in the NWO, for fuck's sake. It was like, really?
yeah. And then WWE carried on that trend. So when the NWO come back, we ended up with like Booker T's in the NWO. Again, no offense to Booker, but like
Yeah.
even they carried on that trend of people joining the NWO unnecessarily, almost. Although I did quite like when Sean joined it.
Hmm. Yeah, it
Anyway,
was
slight digression.
no, it was different, wasn't it? But I mean, to be fair, like if you look at it, if none of this stuff happened and the Austin McMahon stuff, because without Austin McMahon, you don't get Tyson, you don't get the WrestleMania 14 thing, you don't get all the eyeballs back on the product. So WWE potentially, goes out of business. WCW with the premier kind of wrestling promotion run by absolute idiots. The inmates are running the asylum. does wrestling even exist?
That's the thing. I mean, I'd like to think somebody would have picked up the ball at that point, but yeah, WWE probably went. Obviously, it was a big factor ratings war between the two, but that would probably not have stopped WCW from imploding because there was a lot of, like you say, crazy and poor decisions being made there, and it kind of imploded on itself. So that's an interesting point. They may have won the war, but they'd have actually still potentially ruined themselves.
Yeah, I mean, would we be doing this podcast if WWE hadn't have ended up winning the Monday Night Wars? I highly doubt it.
I mean, we would be, but it wouldn't be about wrestling. It'd be about UFC, probably. Let's be honest. Like,
yeah,
we'd have had to find something. You're a UFC mark anyway, so I'd have probably just joined you.
It's true. It's true. So yeah, so obviously there's that, and then another aspect. So obviously, Triple H. The delay from him winning the King of the Ring in 1996 and instead winning it in 1997. So there's quite a big delay in terms of his character, where he was on the card and stuff like that. Without that delay, would he have ever ended up in that weird segment and feud with Stephanie and Test, and ultimately ended up having that thing where he drugged her and married her to get at Vince and this kind of stuff, and then ultimately end up becoming fucking an exec in WWE?
I know. I mean, that is commitment to kayfabe, isn't it? Like, he is still married to her. They've got kids. He's like part of the WWE board of directors, not board of directors. All the upper management now. That is some massive commitment to kayfabe.
Yeah, 100%.
Really, I'm still waiting for the payoff to this day. I don't know what's going to happen.
I know, yeah. It's mad. I mean, I've heard he's just as committed with Katie Vick as well. To be fair, still. But no, I mean, it's an interesting point because
they may never, because obviously, I suppose you don't know the backstage antics, whether he'd have always got to know her and he'd always fall in love and so on. But obviously, this put them working directly with each other. So this is basically when they got to know each other, when he upset China, let's say, and it's interesting to think, isn't it? Because if he'd have not had that time, potentially not gotten with Steph, he wouldn't have gotten to the position he did in WWE. Because let's face it, I'm not saying she's the reason he got where he got, but they may never have given him that chance if it weren't for that. Would he have ever been able to run NXT?
Yeah, I mean, would it even be a thing? Because essentially it was his baby, wasn't it?
It was. It'd probably still be OVW.
Jesus.
Or FC. What was the Florida one?
FCW.
Yeah, FCW. Whatever one it birthed from, probably FCW. Yeah, imagine, because like you say, he did build it as much. I think Sean's running it now, but whatever. Just a random thought, that random tidbit. He's having some time out, isn't he? So I think Sean's running it for the moment.
Yeah. But no, I mean, if you think about it, if some of this stuff doesn't happen and Triple H actually wins King of the Ring in '96, if he does start having that feud with Michaels and stuff like that, who's to say, come Montreal, we would have had Shawn as the champion and would have had Shawn versus Brett, who said it wouldn't be something like Triple H versus Brett. Therefore, there's no screw job, there's no, Mr. McMahon character. Steph never makes her way onto TV in the first place. There's no angle, isn't it? Because
did you just blow my freaking mind?
So
I never even considered that, but yeah, if we'd have gone into Triple H, Brett, I think he's actually made it clear he wouldn't have had the issue because his issue was with Shawn. And yeah, he wouldn't have had a problem dropping the belt. Probably wouldn't have wanted to do it at Montreal, but again, it would have been done potentially right. And yeah, the McMahon character's never born. That's crazy.
Well, that's it. Because if you think about it, that was the birth of the McMahon character. Until that point, everyone thought Vince McMahon was like a weird announcer guy, because that's the role he played on TV. No one really knew that. Oh, okay, he owns the fucking company. There will have been some that knew, but it was after that when he obviously did that thing of Brett screwed Brett, and I actually own this. That's when people started to talk about it. So yeah, he would have never made it on telly. There would be no Mr. McMahon character.
I feel like this is like the start of a Back to the Future kind of thing where we end up traveling back in time. It's like, Triple H, you have to break kayfabe. Hug them for the greater good. I mean, I never even considered it that far, but that's a really solid point. Wow.
it's all very much speculation and ifs and buts and whatever.
That's
But
what this
that's
is.
the
This is what
point
we
of the
do.
segment. It's what if. So yeah, but I mean, imagine how different that could have all ended up being. It could have been the Triple H. Because if you think about it, he's gone on to have a monumental, successful career. Who's to say he was ready in '96 to win the King of the Ring? Who's to say that he wouldn't have won the King of the Ring, being pushed into a main event feud in '96 before he was ready, still not figuring out who, he wouldn't have been the Game. Would he have ever
He'd have
got the
been
Game
there's still
character?
this, like you say, this very much this blue blood character. He may not have been the Game.
Yeah. So therefore he goes
In
there.
fact, if he not have had his time in DX, not ran into a program with Steph, not obviously fallen in love with Steph, would he have still had the same loyalties to WWE that he ended up having? Could he have left? Could he have become the biggest thing in there and ultimately gone somewhere else?
He could have done. He could have, jumped ship to WCW. Because if you think about it, if he would have won in '96 and then got a title opportunity, to put the belt on him, and he was a bit Rocky Maivia, where the fans just didn't take to him and were like, nah, he's not right yet. He's not a main event star. He may have never got that chance again.
Exactly.
He doesn't end up getting the Game character because the timing doesn't line up. It would have gone to Owen Hart, as it was meant to have done anyway.
Yeah.
And then who is Triple H? What character does Triple H play now?
The probably
'Cause
still the blue blood.
Well, yeah, he hasn't got into DX. He hasn't become the Game. Like who
I've
is
got to
he?
throw Wildy out there. Ends up wearing vampire fangs and joining some sort of vampire related faction, whatever.
Triple H becomes Gangrel. Ah!
How the hell did that happen?
But yeah, I mean, obviously he's gone on to be a Hall of Famer. One of the most successful champ. What is he? A 14-time champ or something like that.
Probably.
We'll
go with 14.
Imagine a world where that doesn't happen, all because
You're hearing us, Triple H.
he wasn't
It
ready.
has to happen. It's for the greater good.
So it could have actually been that blessing in disguise. Maybe Austin was ready to take that step before Triple H. Because if you think about it,
I think that's fair, actually.
if you think about it, when Austin was because like late '97, Triple H and Rock were having those classic matches for the Intercontinental title, like the ladder match and stuff like that. So if Triple H was only fighting for the Intercontinental title in '97 after he won the King of the Ring, what would have happened if they would have gone, okay, we're going to put you with Shawn in '96 for the world
accelerate
title?
that, back in '96, yeah.
Because by the sounds of it, he still wasn't ready in '97. This wasn't a case of him being held down. It was just he didn't decide to go with him.
Exactly. Madness. Oh, it's a madness.
It is.
So you heard it here first, guys. It had to happen the way it happened. It was a perfect storm. We'd never have had the DX one's upsetting enough.
Mm-hmm.
We need DX, man. But
I know. So what if the curtain call never happened? Well, we would have been sad because wrestling wouldn't have existed anymore.
Well, it's weird, isn't it? Like, I know, like you say, it's all speculative, but the potential that could have happened where you ended up with Shawn not being a title holder in there, or not being in the match with Brett, and the screw job never happening as a result of the fact that Triple H won the '96 King of the Ring, and then there wouldn't have been any bad blood between Brett and Vince. Vince wouldn't have become the evil boss character, and Brett may have returned to WWE a lot sooner. All of it's fucking insane, just on the back of what Triple H did.
Well, yeah, I mean,
never has a hug in the ring been so much more important than it was.
I mean, the chances of somebody attending a live show happen to film that, bootleg the tape, it gets a bit of traction, people start to see it. The fact that it even exists to this day, there's hardly any other footage from '96.
It's a really good point, actually. Yeah, it's like it wasn't as common that you'd record shit when you're at a live show like that. So quite a rare bit of footage, that really. And we forgot to mention the other one. Like, what if X-Pac had have been in the hug?
I mean, it is a really like, I know we joked about it, but it's a really valid point because you've got to imagine that X-Pac would have been the one taking the fucking heat over Triple H.
That's the thing. Had he have gone, I just need to pick on one particular person. If X-Pac had have been there, he'd have probably been the one who got the heat for it, like you say.
Yeah. And then obviously we would have missed out on
X-Pac.
Yeah.
Probably just sacked them.
Yeah, the X Factor group that we had for Just Incredible and Albert. Nah, I kid. Obviously, I do like X-Pac. I love the stuff he was doing with Kane and stuff like that as well with the Tory and stuff. So yeah, a big fan of X-Pac. So I own a kid.
Oh
But
yeah, to be fair.
yeah, it's a mad one. I mean, we may have never seen the rise to prominence of the New Age Outlaws. No DX, no,
It's a good point. Yeah,
no
without
need for
DX,
additional members when Sean goes off with his little injury. So
with his little injury.
yeah. little bitch. Anyone who's new to the show, I don't like Shawn Michaels because
I mean,
I'm a Bret
let's
Hart
face
fan.
it. Kurt Angle won a gold medal with a broken frickin' neck. So
There you
what
go.
are you doing, Sean?
There you go.
Of course, we kid.
So yeah, anything else we haven't discussed? Any final thoughts on, what could have happened? The butterfly effect of what if the curtain call didn't take place?
I just want to slightly delve into Calm. You were an old school guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you were watching wrestling. You were a big fan of Brett, big fan of Mr. Perfect, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Would this have changed? Let's say it happened the way we're suggesting. He goes on to win King of the Ring in '96 as he should have. Austin doesn't propel quite the same way. Triple H propels to the point that he ends up being the one facing Brett, and we don't get the screw job. What do you think your feelings towards Triple H would have been different? Because again, ultimately he's the guy who sort of went up against Brett, and Brett dropped the title to ultimately.
I think my feelings would have been different because I worry that he would have never ended up with the game character in the first place. And so for me, I was a massive Triple H fan when he became the game, and it was like, it's my time and stuff
so
like
from
that.
a what if point of view, you think potentially you would never have been as big a fan of the game, or the game, can't even call him that, as big a fan of Triple H?
No, and honestly, I don't think
you already hated Shawn, so there's no point with that.
without that gimmick of the game, I don't think he would have gone on to be the champion that he ever was. But that's what I mean. It's such a domino effect because you wouldn't have had DX, I'd imagine, because the whole timeline is so different. Them two would have been feuding around about the time that they were going to form DX anyway. So it might have come
Do you think
too
you'd
late.
have gravitated towards Triple H because you still didn't like Shawn, or do you think you actually wouldn't have hated Shawn as much because the screw job never happened?
Oh, I mean, it was only the screw job afterwards that I really started to hate Shawn. Like I liked the DX stuff.
He was relatively unlikable anyway, so
Oh
you
yeah,
could have still not liked him. But
oh, he was a massive prick, but I liked the DX stuff. To be fair.
Trying to keep it polite, and you're like, yeah, he's a prick.
I mean, it's one of them. I like when he turned heel on Marty Jannetty and threw him through the barbershop window, and him and Sensational Sherry
Marty
and
wasn't a big fan.
That gimmick. Yeah, I believe that. But yeah, I didn't mind him then. It was just more the fact when you could see that he was just absolutely smacked off his face all the time and stuff like that. For me, the main reason I don't like Shawn Michaels is Montreal, and Brett might say he's over it now, but I'm not over it. It's still real to me, damn it. So
I love that. Brett may be over it. I'm not, Shawn.
Fuck you, Shawn. So yeah.
But, so potentially then you might have actually been rooting for Shawn over Triple H in theory.
Potentially, yeah. I mean,
Triple H isn't the game. He isn't the character you've come to know and love. He's the one who took the title off your bestie. So maybe you'd want Shawn to get some redemption in that sense.
Yeah, it's a very likely scenario, but I'd imagine at that point, like, would we even be tuning into WWE? Because
again, yeah, there's that potential domino effect of WWE doesn't succeed. So yeah, who knew how important Triple H was to WWE's success?
Sean Connery.
I do other impressions.
But yeah, one for you because obviously we mentioned it as a joke and stuff then, but like the Undertaker and the curtain call.
Yes. Yes, I'm well aware that there's many what ifs we could do with the Undertaker. By the way, I was only joking when I said he can't be what ifed.
But no, I mean like obviously everything that kind of unfolded and stuff like that. Do you think anything would have changed for you? Like obviously you kind of joined it much later than this anyway, didn't you? But like with Undertaker being such a loyalist and stuff as well, obviously he's your favorite wrestler of all time. Like, would he have ever gone to WCW? Like, what do you think you would have ever even got into wrestling?
I think I still would have. I think, and I don't want to sound like this type of person who's like follows the herd, because I watched it and found something in it that I loved. But I think it was so big when we were in high school that I'd have always had a look, and I've always watched it to see what it was all about. You know what I mean? Now, obviously, Undertaker was a big reason that I became a massive fan, because of the whole character and the theatrics around it. Was like, this is awesome. It's like, I think people have, like, in modern days, describe it as like, this is soap operas for men kind of thing. And as daft as that sounds, it is kind of like that kind of storytelling, isn't it? The over the top theatrical, crazy storytelling is what I sort of gravitated to, and Undertaker sort of epitomizes that in very much in his character. So Undertaker is definitely a big reason that I sort of stayed a massive fan, I suppose. But I think it's an interesting thought, because if we'd have not had the Attitude Era and everything that was going on with that, for the good and the bad, because I know a lot of people look back at it now and go, well, that should never have happened, because we have to course correct everything that happened in the past, or we're all going to die or something, I don't know. So for me, I think not so much the Undertaker, but certainly if it was a much tamer product that had a lot less sort of crazy antics going on, especially at the age I was, would I have potentially carried on with wrestling to the length of time I did, like to now? I don't know, you know. It's I like to think wrestling would always kind of follow the same progression, and would have to do something to stand out differently. But would we have been watching WCW, or like the whole potential of saying, like, would we have not had any wrestling to watch because one company lost out to the other and the other company just imploded on itself? Like, would we have had anything left? I just don't know. There's always a place for wrestling, you know. But what kind of product would we have had over here in the UK is an interesting thought. If both of them had have ultimately not come about, you wouldn't have had. Would ECW have been the biggest thing in wrestling?
And if so, for how long? For how long?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But no, I think I would have always got into some capacity. But it's interesting because it would have been a totally different product in the sense of, like, the Attitude Era not being what it was, because they went full on into the Attitude Era to be a more edgy product and a more grown up or adult product because of what WCW were doing. And like, had the rivalry have been different and had certain things not have happened or certain characters not emerged, then that would have changed the whole thing, and they wouldn't have had a chance to correct themselves. Like, the X is such an important factor to becoming a more edgy product, that if they'd not have had the time, if they not had that happen at the right time, then, like, they would not have had time to do it, would they? So
No.
yeah, mad one to think, mate, but I think potentially, yeah, I might not have stuck with it.
Crazy times. Yeah, I like that one. I like that. It's mad how something so insignificant that people, just was like, it's just a curtain call. Why does everyone flip out about it? Imagine, what if? What if things would have, they could have gone very differently.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And again, it's all very speculative, and you could debate the legitimacy of what we're speculating, but this is the fun of it. What do you reckon would have happened or could have happened?
Let us know. Was there something we missed, some like a pivotal moment that you think would have been altered by this not happening, or is there something we've come up with which you think it would have gone a different way? Let us know, obviously, in the comments. I think this is the second episode of What If that we've done. So if you haven't checked out the first episode, it was all about the Montreal Screwjob. What if that didn't happen? This one, obviously, the Round the Curtain call. We've got a couple of others. We might put them on Instagram to get some votes, but I know there's some on there that
one I want to vote for right now, just because it's come to my mind, and he is my favourite wrestler. I would love to discuss what if The Undertaker had never changed his gimmick to the American Badass.
Ooh, I like that one. Yeah, fucking hell. We have to get it on there. We have to get people to vote. Maybe we'll do like a little.
If we do a few different options, and we ask our Instagram followers to vote for our next What If, I think it'd be a good shout.
Yeah, because I think the ones that we floated when we were, before we decided on this one, we had what if the invasion would have took place with all the top stars? Like, what if they didn't sit out their contracts?
Yeah.
We had what if Brock didn't end the Undertaker's streak? Or what if John Cena was fired in 2003? Obviously, he's spoken a number of times now around he was so close to being let go. So how might that have changed the last kind of 10 years, 20 years of wrestling?
Indeed. So all good fun topics there. I like it.
Certainly. But yeah, thanks again for joining us for What If, all around the curtain call. Obviously, we've spoken about This Week in Wrestling. We've spoken about the latest news and rumours. So if you don't already, go and follow us on all the social medias. We are TikTok famous.
And you know what? If you do already, tell your friends.
Yeah, tell your friends about it. And obviously, as we always say, if you're watching us right now, then, you know, next time you're in the car or somewhere without a screen, you know, feel free to check out the audio version. If you're listening to this and you want to see our beautiful faces, head over to YouTube and you can watch us on there as well. But another fun-filled week. We'll be back probably on like Wednesday. You know, we've effectively become like a Wednesday podcast now, haven't we? But we'll see.
From
we like to
out of
spice it
nowhere.
up. We like to
From out
spice
of
it up.
nowhere. You never know when we're going to hit.
That's it. That's just how we roll. But yes, obviously stay tuned to our social medias. We'll keep you posted if we do find out about any more WWE releases, which may happen today. But until then, thank you again for watching or listening, and we will let Thunder Rosa bid you adieu.
Hey everybody, this is Thunder Rosa, and you're watching or listening A2theK. A2theK.
A2theK.